Welcome back to the Make Space Boring Show. I'm your host, Jason Canagan, the founder of this thing, Cold Star Technologies, and I am here with Raphael Roetgen of E2MC, space venture capital firm, E2MC.space, if you want to look it up. And he's just published a new book, but you have to read it in German. So I am looking forward to it coming out in English, Raphael, so that I can read it. I've been studying German, but I don't think I've got the sophistication to read that. But thanks for being here. We're going to look at the November space funding rounds. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, quite a bit happened. I think the blockbuster round, it was another month where we actually had a blockbuster round of $500 million financing for the American small launch company Relativity Space. Probably most people know, but Relativity Space is one of those what we call a small launcher, just meaning the rocket isn't as big as a SpaceX Falcon 9 or some of the more traditional ULA vehicles. It's still within the small launcher segment. It's a bigger size rocket. It can take about a ton of payload. So that's, for example, significantly bigger than Rocket Lab's Electron, which is now somewhere between 200 and 250 kilograms of payload. And Relativity Space, of course, is also known for extensive use of additive manufacturing, or colloquially 3D printing in its manufacturing process. So that's quite a war chest they have there now with $500 million. I mean, that should really allow them to ramp up production. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing their first vehicle fly, obviously. Their rocket is called Terran 1. I forget now where they're planning on flying next year or the year after, but I would argue they certainly have all of the financial resources now to fly that first vehicle and then actually go to like a scaled up production afterwards. So that was by far the biggest round. I think most of the existing shareholders subscribed around again. We have some new shareholders coming in as well, including some interesting people like Baillie Gifford. People in the US may not know, but this is a very prominent fund management company out of Scotland that is known for taking high tech bets as well. And they're also large investors, for example, in SpaceX. Beyond Relativity, we have a Chinese launch and satellite communications company called Galaxy Space, raised about $30 million round. They're a little bit similar, I guess, to SpaceX in terms of vertical integration, that they're planning on using their launch capacity to also deploy a satellite constellation. And then you're really kind of going across the board. You have some spacecraft, some engines was a major. You have even a materials company that produces materials that can be used for thermal management of spacecraft. I don't actually know how they pronounce the company name, Cabiche or Cerbis Corporation. And a few other things in different countries and in different subsectors. So again, like the most recent months, also a very nice cross-section of both geographically and in terms of the subsectors of space. And since we're recording this already a third of the way into December, we already know next month is going to be exciting. And I've known this when I wrote this because I knew about some of the deals that were happening. But speaking of launch and Relativity Space, we have one of the companies that can become a credible competitor to Relativity in Germany. It's called ESA Aerospace. The day before yesterday, they announced a 75 million euro fundraising round, which also should now bring them at least through the first launch, and arguably also they will be able to already scale up production afterwards. So the launch part of space is looking very interesting, and of course you can tell by my background, the other really exciting event we had in the launch sector was the Starship test flight, the high altitude test flight yesterday. So many exciting things happening in launch.
Right. Well, excellent. I appreciate you coming on to share the details. I'll link to your article on spacewatch.global below, which I always appreciate reading every month. And you're also a venture capitalist yourself and a host of your own show, the Space Business Podcast. So I encourage people to go check that out. Any guests coming up that we should be looking out for?
I think we'll release, my guess is, I was going to say this week, but my guess is probably beginning of next week, we'll release sort of a holiday double episode, which will be almost, I'm not going to say it's going to be holiday themed, but it's going to be a couple of guests who, one is a company that's where you can actually fly personal items to space. So for example, you want to fly anything from a postcard to like, I don't know, an engagement ring or whatever, up to the International Space Station. And just to say, you receive a certificate like, look, this item has gone and come back from space. It's sort of gimmicky, but there might be ideas for Christmas gifts in there. And the company has also given us a promo code for the listeners. And then we are having another company, which is a little bit different. They're actually doing, I would call it thermally optimized outerwear. And the space connection here is that they're using this same type of materials which are used in some spacecraft, even on Mars, to thermally insulate for example, the rovers. And that kind of material is just extremely efficient. It hadn't been used in clothing for humans for a very long time, even though we have used it for space for a longer time. We've known the material for many, many decades. But it just makes the outerwear, even for the winter outerwear, very efficient in the way that you can have very thin outerwear, but it keeps you very warm. So a couple of holiday episodes, a little bit different, and then we have a much longer pipeline start January of more traditional space entrepreneurs, I guess.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for doing this, Raphael.
Sure, my pleasure.